I'm sitting in the kitchen of the house that Deanie and I and the 3 dogs are renting in Moncton, New Brunswick on Friday, September 23rd of 2016. And I decided that I would do this autobiography, stuff about my life, because I saw a video on YouTube of one of the guys that I'm subscribed to, another singer. His name is Larry L. And he did this sitting at his kitchen table in a much more luxurious house. And it kind of moved me, because I've been following this guy for a while, and I wanted to know more personal stuff about his life and who he was, and he shared that, and I said, you know, I really want to do this too. And I probably wouldn't do this if it wasn't for the students that I've taught over the years wanting to know personal stories, because, you know, kids in class, they come in and, you know, you're always teaching them some subject-specific material, but they really want to know more about you as a person, because I'm expected to get to know them to some extent as people, as individuals, and that makes all the difference. And I'm no stranger to YouTube. I mean, I've been here since 2008, 2009, and I've shared my music, which is my primary love, passion, skill, I guess, and I've shared a little bit about my teaching as well. And so some of the aspects of my life have come through in that, but not that much, and certainly not the kind of things that I thought I would talk to you about this evening, because it's nighttime here. And so I don't want to bore you, and if this is not your kind of thing, not your cup of tea, then you're welcome to pass this video up and move on to something more interesting for you. All right? My name is Elliot Ari Kimmel. A-R-I is my middle name. I was born in 1962 in Kingston, Ontario. My father is Stanley Kimmel. My mother is Shirley Kimmel. They're not together, so the names have changed. But January 8 of 62, in the winter time, we lived in Kingston, Ontario for the first couple of years. A year and a half later, my brother, Leslie Allen Kimmel, was born, and we moved to Ottawa, Ontario. The first half of my life, to about age, I don't know, 20, 25, maybe a little bit older, I lived in Ottawa. I didn't always live just in Ottawa. I've done some traveling around and living in other places. Music is the big thing for me. Most of you that will know me, that have met me, maybe not just seen me on YouTube or on Facebook, most of you that will know me will probably know me for teaching. I mean, that was a pretty big part of my life, 25 years, and it's not done yet by any means. But music was the first thing for me. Age 6, age 7, I started to sing. I don't exactly know why I started to sing, but one aspect is that my mother was a dancer when she was young, and she did tap dancing and jazz dancing, and forgive me, Mom, if I get some of this wrong, but she did some performing from a young age, and she was a big influence on me. And I remember the record players in the living room with all the old music. In 1969, Tom Jones, TJ, released Live in Las Vegas. Now, I had been a Tom Jones fan, keep in mind I'm 7 in 69, for a couple of years previous to that. And my mother, like all women back in that time, liked Tom Jones. And who would have blamed them? And so I liked Tom Jones. I probably couldn't really make up my mind as a kid, really. It was what my parents listened to. And it wasn't just Tom Jones. You know, it was Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Barbra Streisand, Vicky Carr, Engelbert Humperdinck. All of those. It wasn't really rock and roll kind of music. That wasn't my first exposure. But the one that really stuck with me was Tom Jones. And to this day, if you said, who is your favorite singer? Who is your idol? I would say Tom Jones. Yes, I love Led Zeppelin. Yes, I love Pink Floyd and Alan Parsons and Genesis. But Tom Jones is what it all boils down to. Now, so I started singing when I was, 6 or 7 years old. And when there was a family get-together, I guess they thought it was cute to have the little kid in his pajamas stand up and sing, and I would do it. The first songs that I am known for, not by you guys, but by, the older generation, was Raindrops. Raindrops are falling on my head. Raindrops. Delilah by Tom Jones. Stuff like that. My Yiddish Mama, which is, because I'm Jewish, and that was a big thing. But in 1969, Tom Jones released Live in Las Vegas. And that blew me away, that album. I can still see the album cover. He's got the microphone in his hand out. He's wearing the tight pants and the little, sort of a suit, white shirt, black vest, black pants, black shoes, rocking out with that voice. He was at the peak of his singing. So my mom brought home the album, played it on the stereo, and I loved it. I loved it. I was over the moon for that. I learned every word, every song, every instrumental part, every cough, every special cry from the audience, if there was somebody saying something to him. And what I would do is, because I used to sing at night, here's another thing, by the way, when we went to bed, when it was bedtime, I shared a room with my brother Les, and I would say to him, do you mind if I sing tonight? Because I would sing out loud in my bed. And my parents gave me a little bit of a curfew. They said, okay, you can sing for 30 minutes, because it was out of control. I'd sing all night. I loved it. So my parents said, you can sing for 30 minutes. All right. Now, they weren't always timing me, whatever. But I have this memory. What I used to do with Live in Las Vegas is I would go under my covers, and somehow I figured out that if I put my ear to the mattress, the way if you put your ear to the mattress, it echoes a little bit. It sounded a little bit like a microphone. So the covers over, and I would sing the whole album from start to finish, from the opening note through all the chatter in between every single song. And Live in Las Vegas ends with, it's not unusual. And he'd go, it's not unusual to find that I'm in love with you. Oh, 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 all right, come on, baby, tell me one more time. And then he'd say, thank you very much. And you'd hear, and the horns would keep going, for a couple minutes, and then finally, and then they'd end. I would do the whole album. All right, so I certainly went longer than my 30 minutes of time to sing. And it's a long time to be under your covers. It's hot. And as soon as I hit that final note of It's Not Unusual and the live album ended, I'd get up and I'd run into the bathroom and I'd look at myself in the mirror because I'd be all sweaty. And I felt like I was like Tom Jones. He'd be all sweaty after a concert. And that's just what I did at 7 or 8 years old. All right, so Tom Jones. We started to do little shows around the community in Ottawa. And I started to be billed as Tom Jones Jr. Now that was a little bit of a joke that my parents would do as we did a show. Now what I mean by that is my mother and her sister, Helen, would tap dance. And they would do Al Jolson songs. They put on the makeup and they play the Al Jolson song and they would mime it, all right, like lip sync it essentially. And they would do a number of numbers, and I would come on, and there would often be a piano player, and I would sing Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head and Delilah and whatever else I was doing at the time. I don't quite remember. But so I was performing at a very young age, and was singing. When I was 10 years old, my parents decided, I believe they must have decided, that I should have a guitar. And so they bought me a guitar and they signed me up for guitar lessons, you know, beginner guitar lessons. So I'd have something to accompany my singing. And I really took to the guitar. I used to practice all the time. And I remember that I would be driven to Sunday Fun Day at the Jewish Community Center downtown Ottawa for my guitar lesson. And my brother would go for activities as well. So we were, you know, kids going for, you know, Sunday morning activities. Mine was supposed to be guitar lessons. And I say supposed to be because I would bring my guitar, my cheap little Sears guitar in a guitar case. But I didn't go to my lessons. I went upstairs, I found another open room, and I would play guitar. But I didn't want to do She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, because that's what they were doing. I would be practicing my chords and eventually writing my first songs at age 10. I don't know if I'm going to put into this video or not little clips. I might play a bit of these. The first song that I ever wrote in my life was You Are My Sunshine. Now I know you know a song, there's a famous song about that. Oh, you know what? I think it might have just been called Sunshine. And it was sunshine, you make me happy. You make me happy when skies are gray. Sunshine, you make me happy. You make me happy. And this I'll say, baby, baby, you and I will fly to the sky. Oh, girl, I want you near. Please, oh, you know, it was something like that. You know, it's pretty naive. And it's funny, I should remember that. We're going back, I don't know, a lot of years, 40-some years. The second song I wrote was called Frost and Fire. The third song I wrote was called Shadows. And I remember them because shortly after that, a couple of years later anyhow, I went to an overnight summer camp, you know, sleepaway summer camp. And I did not fit in very well. It was an awkward time. My teenage years were an awkward time. I'll talk a little bit about that. But somebody had a cassette recorder, and they recorded me singing those original songs. And this is one of my first experiences with some kind of mass exposure. I mean, I had sang at a lot of family functions and done some shows as a little kid, and I'm still kind of little, at age 13 at this overnight camp, 12, 13. But they played those songs over the camp PA system. You know, we've got these poles outside and the speaker, and you can hear them all throughout the, and this was out in the woods somewhere, some kind of summer camp out there by the lake. They must have held the cassette by a microphone, you know, hooked up to the PA, and they played them. And they played them every day and multiple times a day. And so I'd be walking around in the camp with some friends, or we'd be going for swim time or football or whatever we did. And you'd hear my songs. And it was a huge boost to my ego, not to mention to my social life with the girls. And so it was incredible. And I was really hooked, very hooked on getting that kind of attention or recognition. Possibly to my detriment at times, always seeking some kind of attention. I mean, I grew up as a relatively hyper very energetic, not athletic, that's not what I mean, but energetic, wild, out of control at times kid. And I was very much of an extrovert with the singing. I mean, you know, kids sing, but I mean, I was standing up in front of adults at a very young age, singing fearlessly, you know, showing off. And I got, I don't know if you call it respect, but some kind of appreciation. And that nurtured me. And I loved to sing. But now I've got a guitar, and I'm 10 years old, and my first band was with my brother, who played bongos. And I played guitar, but this is before I really knew how to play guitar. All I would do was strum it, open it. And we had a couple other kids in the neighborhood, and we were called the Chimpanzees. And we sang, what did we sing? What the world needs now is love, sweet love. We sang that. We sang some of the 60s songs or whatever. Raindrops, of course. Yeah, Chimpanzees. I remember we used to go door to door. There's about 4 or 5 of us in this little group. Nobody knew how to do anything. The only one is maybe I knew how to sing a little bit, but you know, I'm just a kid. But you know, we're kind of fearless. And we'd go door to door, we'd knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and some old lady would come to the door and we'd say, do you mind if we sing for you for donations? And we just wanted the money. We didn't know what we were doing. And so, you know, they'd give us a quarter or you know, a little handful of change, and we'd go from door to door. We'd make a bit of money. And I remember one time we did it, and then we left and we went back and we asked for more money. It was just silly. And they looked at us like, are you kidding me? You know? I don't know why we did it, but yeah. Now, hang on. "13 years old, off to high school, grade 9, Ridgemont High School, Alta Vista area of Ottawa. It got really tough. It got really bleak. Really black, depressing. I'm the firstborn of 3 kids. There was another brother that was born a number of years later, 8 years younger than me, Sean. Off to high school I go, and then a year later my brother Les follows. And things went really bad from there, pretty much. They probably started a little bit earlier. I think my parents were having some troubles too, and I may have been having some issues. I don't recall. You know, I remember getting in trouble and doing stunts when I was young and lighting stuff on fire and getting punished. And you know, that's back in the days when you could get a spanking, or you get punished, or you get humiliated, and that was the way to solve those things back then. But off to high school, and it did not go well for me at all. I don't know why I went into a depression, a crazy period. Now, without getting into too many, you know, strange details, you know, keeping in mind it is the early 70s, and I got in with a crowd of people that were up to no good, and so I got up to no good as well. And you know, a lot of chances were taken and a lot of things were done that were, you know, not things that society would condone, and dangerous. And I was out of control. I started running away from home. I was about 12, 13 years old. I don't know why. You know, it wasn't particularly bad at home, but it was bad in my head, I guess. And I figured that I had to leave home. And I would pack a couple of things in a bag or a backpack or whatever, my pockets, and I'd head out. Where would I go? Up the street to the public school that I was no longer attending, and I would sleep in the back of the public school on the grass at the jungle gym rather than at home in my bed. Or I would find a car with the door open. I'd sleep in the back of somebody's car. You know, it was just crazy times, and somehow I got into a tailspin. I didn't come out of that until my into my 20s. So high school, I started skipping school, hanging around with the wrong people, getting into things that I shouldn't have. But you know, through that time, I was with people that had interests in music, in rebellion, in philosophies, you know, religion, spirituality, you know, having a good time, Led Zeppelin, whatever it was. And I learned from that. I learned how to take care of myself, because I would run away and I would come home. And then I would run away and then I would come home. And by age 15 or 16, I was gone from home. I left. And where did I go? Wherever I could. Friends' houses, you know, apartment lobbies, I would sleep there. Anywhere but home. And I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be a big guy. And so I was out of the house at a pretty young age, living with a bunch of crazy guys or girls or whatever, and had a lot of experiences. For a good portion of my teenage years, I became a street musician. Long before I heard the word busker. I had never heard that word until years later. Maybe it was called that already, but I was a street musician in Ottawa on Spark Street in the Spark Street Mall, and anywhere in Ottawa, the National Arts Centre, in the market. I learned a lot from being a street musician. I loved being a street musician. I fed myself and survived, made a living from that. In those days, if you were a good musician, a good singer, and if you played to the audience, you could make a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, I mean I made between $30 and $80 a day. Sometimes more, sometimes, you know, $40 or something. It was good money, especially back in those days. But the trick was, and I learned this very young, and I learned this from a guy, Dave McDonald. He'll never see this video. You won't have heard of him. But I learned from him. I saw him as a street musician as well. I was a street musician, and I had long hair and a headband and stuff. But I learned from him to play Barry Manilow for the older crowd, for the adults. Now, of course, I still love Tom Jones, so I throw those in. But just like everybody else, I was doing, you know, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, American Pie. Well, everyone loves that. But very quickly, I learned from him to play music that was more appropriate for an older crowd, so that they didn't look at me like I was just another street guy, you know, because I had ripped jeans and long hair and a headband. But when they come walking by and all of a sudden I was singing Raindrops, or a Barry Manilow song, or a Frank Sinatra song, or an Elvis song, that was not what the other hippies were doing. They wouldn't compromise, and I don't blame them. They were like, you know, take me as I am. They didn't make any money, but I made money. And I learned at a young age that you're going to have to compromise. You're going to have to sing what people want to hear to some extent. You know? And so I was very successful as a street musician. I got myself featured in the newspaper a couple times and in magazines, and I won some talent competitions and stuff. So music was a really big part of my life. And then I started playing clubs. And it must have been 16, 17, and I got into the coffee houses, the cafes, the bars. You know, I was underage, but I'm playing in the bar. They're all getting drunk, but, you know, whatever. I probably was too, but anyways, you know, and then I had to get a little bit more legitimate, and then I said, oh, I'm going to join the Musicians Union. So I go into the Musicians Union, I pay my fees, and I was now part of the organization, part of the establishment. And I started to get higher paying gigs, more prestigious gigs. But of course, some of those places wanted me to cut my hair, and that became an issue. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But for a number of years, though, I played clubs, and it was constant. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every week. I became a regular, like the house band. I'm a guitar player, singer, you know, at a particular club. And then sometimes I'd rotate to other ones and then I'd come back. You know, if you're a musician, you know about these things. Throughout that time, I'm writing songs. I'm developing a bit of a name for myself in the Ottawa Valley area. Got myself a little car and I'd drive off and I'd sing in some of the areas outside of Ottawa and get known there a little bit. And it was going okay. A lot of parties, a lot of girlfriends, a lot of friends, and it got to the point where I could go to a party somewhere and they'd say, "I've heard of you before. You're that Elliot guy." And I got used to that, and I played it very cool. I was not full of myself, and I was, you know, just a normal guy trying to make it in the music business and getting there, sort of getting there. And you know, there were little things on local radio, little cable television did some stuff on me, and you know, all the little things that happen if you got a little bit of talent and you're lucky and you're in the right place at the right time. I got a million stories like that, and of course this video could go on forever, and I'll probably let it go for a while. I'll tell you another story about singing in the street. Art Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water, you know, all the Simon and Garfunkel stuff. I used to sing when I was quite young and on the street, early on the street, kind of pleasantly. And one day, a guy came by and said to me, and I quote, "Stop singing like a girl." All right? No offense to any girls, especially not Stevie Nicks or Nancy Wilson. He said, "Stop singing like a girl." And I took that to heart. And that is when my voice changed. My style of singing changed to a more of a gruff kind of thing, where I learned how to sound a little harsher and gruffer. Because you know, before then I sang a lot softer, but I sang loud on the street. That's the other thing you learn on the street. You learn how to project. You strengthen your muscles. You learn how to sing out loud and sing to people, and smile at people and nod at them and wink at them. And when they put money in your case, you saying thank you. And you learn, you know, those skills, very valuable skills, singing in the street. And I learned how to sing more gruff because of that. Now I also met another man on the street, this is still in Ottawa, who came by and wanted to record me and wanted me to get into the studio. His name was Bill Griffiths, and he played a huge role in my life because I was about 17. He took me under his wing to his recording studio. I had never been in a recording studio. We had all played around with little cassette tapes, and at some point graduated to like the Porta studio, where you could record one track over another and do it maybe 4 times or something like that. But he had a real recording studio. It was a home recording studio, but this is back in the days of tape, reel to reel, and he had some really good equipment. And I didn't know anything about recording, really. Through him, I learned about multi-tracking and harmonies and overdubbing. And of course I was no good at it at first, but very quickly you get used to that kind of thing. And as if you've seen any of my YouTube videos, you know that I have had to do that over the years again and again. And so those skills, you know, started with him. So I'm very grateful to him as well. But as the teenage years are unfolding, and I'm getting a little bit later on in my teens, you know, we pick up the electric guitar, right? Everyone wants to be Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix, so we go get ourselves electric guitars. And we all started off with those Ibanez Les Paul copies or SG copies or, you know, Fender Strat copies, whatever they were, until we got enough money. And we worked hard though in those days. We got little part-time jobs, or we played in the street, played the clubs. We saved our money as best we could, and stuff we didn't spend on beer. And we bought ourselves a Gibson Les Paul or a Fender Stratocaster. You know, the real thing back in those days, no crappy guitars. They were very expensive. And so along came the band era. My brother Les became a drummer. he started off while I was taking guitar lessons. He got, you ready for this? He got the recorder. I don't know what anybody was thinking, but I mean, I guess you couldn't have two guitar players in the family, so he got recorder. He did not particularly like that, and eventually got into drums. And so Les played drums, I played guitar, and we started bands together, the two brothers, and we get, a bass player or another guitar player or whatever. And we did that. So, everybody in my generation that plays a little bit of music played in all kinds of garage bands. And we did that. And eventually we got a lineup that we kind of liked. And we're searching for a name. And Les came up with the name Prodigy. And it came from a dictionary. I think he just flipped it open and found it. Now, of course, there's a famous band called Prodigy. But that's what we call ourselves. And we started playing clubs. And, it got loud and crazy, and now we got all our amps and lights and PA system and a bunch of guys in the band with all their friends and a van and a couple of broken down cars and girls, and, that's what it was. And when you're young, you have all the energy, to stay up all night and party like crazy and do whatever with the girls and running with the devil, whatever, running with the wolves, whatever that expression is. So we played a lot of clubs, and we got some success here and there, and that's all going along. All right. Now, at one point in time, when I was 18, I was living in a house with my brother Les and a bunch of guys in the band and whoever was crashing there at the time. And me and Don Kent decided we were going west. A lot of people seem to go west back in those days. And so I remember sitting on the roof of this house at Gladstone and somebody talking to me about religion, talking to me about this guy named Jesus. And being Jewish and having gone through Hebrew school, I was sheltered from Jesus. Nobody told me about this guy. And I remember saying, I don't really know who he is. I don't know what he did. And when Dawn and I went out west, went to Calgary, we hitchhiked from Ottawa to Calgary. That's where we went. It took us about 3 days to hitchhike out there. Now, back in those days, hitchhiking seemed safer. What would we know? We're 18 years old. We're doing it. I was playing on the 8th Avenue Mall in Calgary, street musician again, and it was going very well out in Calgary. Calgary treated me very well on the street and in some of the clubs. And one day a guy came up to me and gave me some money. And I said, thank you. And he said, that's nothing compared to what Jesus will give you. And I was the seeker, right? Like the Who would say. Back in those days, I did a lot of experimentation. I tried a lot of things. I did a lot of crazy stuff, but I learned from it. And I wanted to know. And I was ripe for that. And so that day I became a born-again Christian. I got really into that for about 6 to 8 months. Cleaned up my act, cut my hair, got a real job, started donating my entire paycheck to the priest I was living with. That doesn't sound like it was a smart thing to do, does it? But what did I know? I was saved. Hanging around with a bunch of Christian people. And, it was just a weird, cool experience for me. I got right into it. That's what I always did. I threw myself into these experiences. And I sank or swam. And anyways, I did that for a while, came back to Ottawa and quickly put that behind me. But that's always affected me. The Jewish, Christian. As the years would go by, I would experiment with various other religions. And I don't know if you've ever seen there's a picture, I'll see if I can find it. And you can't see my tattoos on my fingers here anymore, but I had a bunch of religious symbols all across for all the different religions I've been involved with, and there's tons of them. And so yeah, that was my experience in Calgary. I mean, there's a lot more that happened, but that was the born again Christian thing. So I'm back in Ottawa, and I'm back with the band, and writing songs, and a bunch of them are on YouTube. Some of them I still play to this day. They're teenage crazy, silly things, whatever. What did I know back then? I'm in my 20s, almost in my 20s, I guess. And things got a little bit more serious with the current band I was in. Another house, living at the house with a bunch of guys in the band. I guess we were still calling ourselves Prodigy, but this was another lineup of Prodigy members. Al Wilmore was on keyboards with us, and Paul Manley, who was on bass with us. And we played a lot of gigs, we made a lot of money, and we played very loud. Song Remains the Same was out. All the Jimi Hendrix documentary movies were out, the Janis Joplin, the Doors movies, and it was rock and roll time, all right? And we weren't little kids anymore. We were all driving motor vehicles when we probably shouldn't have. And towards the end of that, it just got a lot more serious for me. I was out of control, as a lot of people were, but I was always more out of control, because for me it was more. I had to do it the most, the best. And so I dropped music. And I'm not going to get into all the details about how this happened, but I dropped it and I went back to school. Now, being brought up Jewish, my parents and grandparents had the thought that I might become a doctor. And that was pretty standard for those days, is my understanding. It wasn't a racist type thing or to say. It was the way it was. All right, he's a Jewish kid. I had some interest in medicine at a young age. They were encouraging me along that road, and I admit I liked it. And when I got myself a little bit screwed up in music, and I decided I wanted to go back to school, I thought, that's it. I want to be a doctor, all right? And so I threw myself into that. As I throw myself into everything, I threw myself back into school. I cut my hair. I sold off all my guitars. I didn't want anything to do with music. I quit the band, and I severed my relationship with all those hippies, because I needed to concentrate and go back to school. And when I say I had to go back to school, I mean high school, all right? I'm 22, 23 now, and I went back to grade 10, 11. All right? That's the way it goes. That's what happens when you drop out of school and you don't do well. I went back as an adult, sort of an adult. But I was clean and sober, and I went back to school, and I worked really hard. And I started doing really well at school, and it brought me some sense of gratification. And I felt like I was doing the right thing for my family, for my parents. They were proud of me, as opposed to like you schmuck slapping me for the crazy shit I was doing. I was finally doing the right thing. A little bit late, but at least I was doing it. And so I was doing well at school and away from the hippies. And I wanted to be a doctor, so I studied like crazy. And then I graduated from high school, and I got into university. And I went to University of Ottawa and I studied biology, a major in biology, a minor in chemistry. And I went on, I did 3 years. There's my bachelor, my BSc, from the guy that was the street musician and the screw up and the runaway. I'm doing all right. I went on and I did my honors BSc, and there was, magna cum laude, not the highest, but that was for the real guys that are getting into medical school, the summa cum laude. That, was never going to happen for me, but I worked really hard and I did well, and that's good enough. But anyways, I started trying to apply for medical school, but listen, let's be honest, I'm not that bright. I'm really not. I can work very hard, but I could never put the same amount of energy and intellect, well, intellect is different, but passion and that into into academic stuff as I did in the music. But I still did a lot, and it got me through my honors BSc, and it got me into the interviews for medical school, but it never got me in the door. And when it comes to writing the MCAT, I was never very, I'm not a brilliant guy. I can do what I need to do to survive. People started saying to me, you're a great speaker. I would give little seminars, because you have to do that presentation. Say, you're a great speaker, really good personality and energy. Have you ever thought of being a teacher? And I hadn't really. But I started to hear that. And as it started to look like the doors for medicine weren't really going to work, and maybe that wasn't really what I wanted, I started to consider teaching. And I finished my honors BSc. I did a 5th year of some university courses. During this time, about 7 or 8 years of going back to school, I had mostly not touched a guitar. Only in the later years of university did I start playing a couple of gigs. Music was off limits to me for the most part. But I had a friend who worked with the Ottawa police. This would seem like a very upstanding guy. He was a cop. He was playing some shows and brought me in. I didn't even have a guitar. I didn't own any equipment, okay? He provided everything. I would just come in and play guitar and sing with him and with the band. And so I started doing it. And I make a bit of money, slowly getting back into music, loosening up a little bit. Like, whoa, okay, the tailspin's gone. I proved I can do some stuff in school and get my act together. I can be sober and whatever, and I can do a bit of music. Music is not the devil. So I went the teaching route, and I got accepted to University of Western Ontario. I was in London, Ontario. I had never been to London. And I went to Teachers College out in London. I was going to say out here because I've lived in London for so many years, and now I'm in Moncton, right? And I became a high school science teacher. I got a job right out of Teachers College. I sold myself to a principal and said, I won't want you in my school. And I was very fortunate. And I got in right away. And that's how I got into the teaching. And I did that for 25 years. And all throughout, I worked my tail off at teaching, partially because I wanted to prove that I was not a screw-up. I wanted to prove that to society and to my parents and to my relatives and to myself, that I could have a real job where you had to stand up and be counted. And I show up for work every day, except in my last year or two, don't tell anyone. And be past the whatever, impress the parents is what I'm trying to say. Be able to stand up to people like my parents, the parents of the students, and have them respect me and think I'm doing a good job and not think I'm some kind of a music hippie that should be playing guitar in the street still. That I deserve to be in that school building and with their children. And so I worked very hard at teaching. I developed my website, Zerobio. Some of you know about that. And I continued to do music. I found a balance. It was a tough balance. Teaching took a lot out of me because I cannot do something that I like to do or I have to do part way, or even 99%. It must be more. I must prove that I can excel at this if I really want to. And that may go all the way back to my early childhood days or whatever, or the need to impress people, the extrovert in me, whatever it is, I value that. It puts a lot of pressure on me. It takes a lot of energy, but it gives me good results. It's the way I know how to do things. I'm not very good actually with the balance aspect in life. It's usually all or nothing in a couple of areas. And so, teaching went very well for me because I worked really hard at it. And I developed Zerobio, the website. I wrote science songs. It was obvious that I was back into music and recording and stuff and playing at assemblies, and the kids gravitated towards me. And this brings me back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video. They wanted a human being to teach them. That may not have been the case when you and I, if we're of similar age, I'm 55 now as I record this in 2016. Well, 54, I'll be 55 in a couple of months. You know, we didn't know human beings as teachers. I mean, some of them, you know, I remember in your elementary school who affected you the most, or high school, your favorite teacher and stuff. But for the most part, teachers were the enemy, the establishment, robots, aliens, evil, you know, that kind of stuff. But in this more modernish world, you know, my feeling is that students need to know that their teachers were human and fallible and real, flesh and blood. And so I would let little parts of my life out in class, some stories, some music, you know, relatively tame stuff. And I think that the kids really appreciated that and grew to like me, I would like to say, I hope, and respect me, and appreciate me, which is all I ever wanted anyhow. I am not a stellar teacher. I never could be. I was a good teacher. I was a human teacher. I knew my stuff. That's about it. But they came to like me. So 25 years of that. There's more to the story. I'll tell you, if you're still with me. Three-quarters through the way of my teaching career, which was mostly at Central Secondary School in London, Ontario, the academic school, I was making good money, more than I ever had. I had a new car whenever I wanted one, pretty much. Had nice guitars. Everything's going well. But the bug came back to me. Something was missing in my life. You know, the excitement, the craziness. You know, because to be a teacher, you have to be very organized and very straightforward and planning everything and meticulous and pragmatic and practical and all those other adjectives that I don't know. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for someone to spend my life with. I just knew that I was in a bit of a black spot. I had discovered YouTube, and I started putting a couple songs on there. Very, very early stuff, all right? Didn't know much about the recording software or the gear, didn't have that, didn't really have the time for it, just started doing a little bit. And one day, and the story differs if you talk to me or if you talk to her, one day someone wrote on my YouTube channel on a song, and I think if you find that song and scroll down years back, you can still find the comment. Something about, "You are my favorite singer now. I watch your videos all the time." Something like that. All right. And that intrigued me. Now, it was from a girl. I was not looking for girls. Plenty of girls out there. I had lots of girls when I was young. I didn't need a girl. You know, my parents always said, you know, we're going to get married, start dating. No, I was really not that interested. I did all that when I was young. I was married to my job, music. But this comment affected me in a certain way that others hadn't. And so I decided I'd go try to find out who sent it, check out her page. And that's when I heard and saw the video of Dini singing "Put Your Head on My Shoulders." Funny thing is that she is an Indonesian girl from Jakarta, 10,000 miles away, singing a Paul Anka song, who comes from Ottawa, where I'm from. And of course I had loved Paul Anka as a kid, and I've seen him perform. And so very quickly I turned around and I said to Deanie, I said, I didn't know her. We're starting to communicate on YouTube, you know, just with little messages. And I said, do you mind if I also record a version of this song, Put Your Head on My Shoulders? And it's there on YouTube. If you go look for it, you're still with me in this video. In the video, I switch her name. And I mean, I say her name in the video, and I think she got a little thrill of that because we barely knew each other. So I recorded Put Your Head on My Shoulders. We started, you know, a little bit of a dialogue. We're trying to get to know each other. I'm a Canadian guy, a little bit older than her, and she's way out there. We don't know each other. But as musicians do, I turned around and I said, after about a week, and I said, do you mind if I write you a song? Because that's what I do. I don't know how to speak to people. I mean, I've been a teacher, but at that time, I don't know how to speak to people. I know how to sing. That's what I do. And so I said, do you mind if I write you a song? And then I said in it, you know, I said, I have to say some things in the song that, you know, might not seem appropriate to say when you don't know someone very well. You know the way songs always say, you know, I love you, and all that, you know, it's like, you know, it's a song, you know. I'm not necessarily saying I love you, but, well, maybe I already knew it. So I wrote Indonesian Girl, and that's on YouTube. And then I wrote a bunch of other ones, and she did too. And so we started connecting through YouTube. And eventually I went out and I visited her in Jakarta on March break. And I got a job there for the following year in September to teach, science job. Came back to Canada, finished the year off at Central, took a leave of absence, sold my car, packed all my stuff, shipped it over because I figured I was going to be staying in Jakarta for quite some time. I was not sure how it would turn out, but I figured I needed to change. And I went and I taught for 1 year in Jakarta. During that year, in December 12th, 12/12 of 2009, Deanie and I got married after having known each other for a little bit over a year, I guess. So we got married, moved in together there, and I taught at JIMS, Jakarta International Multicultural School in Jakarta for a year. And drove a motorcycle, you know, experienced the religion, converted to, you know, another religion. This is what I do. I try a religion and I drop it. I try a religion, I drop it. And don't be offended, anybody out there. It's the way we do things. I don't have any particular affinity for any religion at all. I don't really care for any of them either. But that's what I do. And after that, Deanie and I moved back to Canada, and I went back to my job at Central. Now we're living together. I'm starting to get a couple of dogs. Deanie's a musician. I'm a musician. We've got our little studios, separate studios, you know, amassing the recording gear and instruments as the years go on, and then getting broke and selling them off and stuff, you know. It's just a cycle, whatever. But making music. And you can check out Deanie's music as well. And that's what we did. I continued to teach, continued to work on zerobio, and we started getting, you know, 1 dog, then 2 dogs, then 3 dogs, and then we find out we're pregnant. All right, we waited a while for that too, and then we got pregnant, and at about that time, I knew I was done with the teaching. You know, maybe, you know, your average person would go on, you know, and teach instead of till they're 55. Okay, this is young to retire. But, you know, I didn't live an average life. I did a lot of stuff when I was very young, and it's taken its toll on me. I'm tired, and I have put up with the suits, the administration, the bureaucracy for many, many years. I would never have been the type to have done that. I probably should have been a musician, but things happened differently, and I'm fine with that, and I'm grateful for my years of teaching. But it took a lot for me to keep this poker face. So I did it for 25 years, and that was enough. We moved to Moncton, New Brunswick, which is where we are now. about to have a baby in, well, not tomorrow or anything. We got a few months to go. I'm still doing the music. I'm still trying to sell my albums. I will eventually play clubs out here in time. I'm still working on my website. I'm still trying to earn a bit of a living from, the stuff that I'm creating there. And I am looking forward to another 20, 30, 40, maybe 100 more years of cool life experiences, music, family, baby stuff. It's an incredible life, and this is the one. This is the only one, and it's time for everybody to get over themselves and to appreciate their friends, their family, to be good to each other. We do not need to put each other in our place. All right? We don't need to go teaching big, heady lessons of life. It's silly. We got 80, 90 years on this planet and we are gone. All right? Let's not waste it on this petty shit. All right? Let's have a good time. Let's take care of each other. Let's push. Let's rock the school year. Let's do all that good stuff, because there is always enough crap and bad stuff out there to keep us going. We don't need that. All right? We all have our share of it. So anyhow, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. My name is Elliot Kimmel and I am a survivor. Thank you for watching.